The O.J. Simpson murder trial is one of the most infamous and polarizing court cases in American history. It wasn't just a trial, it was a cultural event, a media circus, and a national obsession that exposed deep divisions in American society. It raised questions about race, celebrity, wealth, gender, law enforcement, and the very nature of justice. To this day, people still argue about whether O.J. Simpson got away with murder or whether he was an innocent man framed by a corrupt system. To understand the impact of this case, we need to go back to June 1994, when the shocking story first began. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were brutally murdered outside Nicole's Brentwood condo in Los Angeles. Nicole was O.J.'s ex-wife, and Goldman was a friend who had stopped by to return a pair of sunglasses left at a restaurant. What police discovered at the scene was horrifying. Both Nicole and Ron had been stabbed multiple times in what appeared to be a frenzied attack. Nicole's body was found nearly decapitated, and Ron's body showed signs that he had fought desperately for his life. Almost immediately, suspicion fell on O.J. Simpson. At the time, Simpson was not just a former football legend. He was an American icon. He had been a Heisman Trophy winner, a Hall of Fame running back for the Buffalo Bills, and a household name thanks to his movie roles, endorsements, and charismatic public persona. To many, he was a symbol of success, wealth, and the ability to cross racial boundaries in America. But beneath that public image, his marriage to Nicole had been deeply troubled. Police records revealed years of domestic violence, and Nicole had repeatedly told friends that she feared for her life. The case exploded into the public eye on June 17, 1994, when O.J. was scheduled to turn himself in to the LAPD. Instead of surrendering, Simpson fled in a white Ford Bronco driven by his friend Al Cowlings. What followed was one of the most surreal events ever broadcast on live television, the slow-speed chase along the freeways of Los Angeles. Millions of viewers tuned in as helicopters followed the Bronco, which crawled along the highway while crowds gathered on overpasses, cheering O.J. on. The chase interrupted major television programming, including the NBA Finals, and it felt less like a police pursuit than a bizarre piece of performance art unfolding in real time. Inside the Bronco, police later found Simpson's passport, a disguise, and nearly $9,000 in cash, items that looked like the tools of a man planning to run. When O.J. finally surrendered, the stage was set for what the media quickly dubbed the trial of the century. From the very beginning, it was clear that this case would be unlike any other. It had everything: fame, fortune, glamour, brutality, racism, sex, betrayal, and shocking violence. It also had a cast of larger-than-life characters on both sides. On the prosecution's side were Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, tasked with proving beyond a reasonable doubt that O.J. Simpson had committed the murders. They believed they had overwhelming evidence. Blood samples linked Simpson to the crime scene. A bloody glove was found behind his guest house. Hair and fibers matched. DNA evidence, which was still relatively new to juries in the mid-1990s, seemed to strongly implicate him. And then there was the history of domestic violence, the numerous calls Nicole had made to police, and her diary entries describing abuse. But Simpson had what became known as the Dream Team, a group of high-powered defense attorneys led by Robert Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and others. The team was incredibly expensive, and Simpson's wealth allowed him to mount a defense that few defendants could ever hope for. From the beginning, their strategy wasn't just to question the evidence. It was to put the LAPD itself on trial. The defense argued that O.J. Simpson was the victim of a racist conspiracy, and the central figure in that argument was Detective Mark Furman. Furman was the officer who discovered the infamous bloody glove at Simpson's property. But during the trial, it was revealed that Furman had a long history of making racist remarks, including using racial slurs on tape. The defense argued that Furman had planted evidence to frame Simpson, exploiting America's awareness of police misconduct and racial bias. This tactic deeply resonated with many in the Black community, particularly in Los Angeles, which was still reeling from the Rodney King beating and the riots that followed. The trial itself was a media spectacle unlike anything before it. Cameras were allowed inside the courtroom, broadcasting every dramatic moment to millions of viewers. Talk shows, tabloids, and news programs dissected the case daily. Simpson's fame meant that this wasn't just a murder trial. It was entertainment, and America couldn't look away. One of the most dramatic moments came when prosecutors asked Simpson to try on the bloody gloves found at the crime scene. Simpson struggled to pull them over his hands, grimacing and appearing to show that they didn't fit. The moment was televised to the entire country, and Johnny Cochran seized on it with the now legendary line, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." That phrase became the defining soundbite of the trial, undermining the prosecution's case and sticking in the minds of jurors. The prosecution's reliance on DNA evidence, which today would seem airtight, was another challenge. At the time, DNA testing was still new and confusing to many jurors. The defense was able to exploit that confusion, suggesting that sloppy police work and contaminated evidence made the results unreliable. They hammered the theme that the LAPD was corrupt, racist, and incompetent. Meanwhile, the media relentlessly covered every angle of Simpson's life. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Tabloids published stories about his relationships, his children, and his behavior in jail. The trial blurred the lines between news and entertainment, becoming a daily soap opera for the entire nation. After months of testimony and a trial that stretched nearly a year, the jury reached its verdict on October 3, 1995. The entire nation stopped to watch as the decision was read live on television. Schools paused classes. Offices gathered around TVs. Over 100 million people tuned in. When the words "not guilty" were announced, O.J. Simpson broke down in tears. Outside the courtroom, reactions were sharply divided. Many African Americans celebrated, seeing the verdict as a rare victory against a system that often brutalized and criminalized them. Many white Americans were outraged, convinced that Simpson had gotten away with murder because of his fame and wealth. The verdict didn't end the controversy. In 1997, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman filed a civil lawsuit against O.J. Simpson. This time, the burden of proof was lower, and the jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths, awarding $33.5 million in damages to the families. Simpson never paid the full amount, but the civil trial cemented the idea that, in the eyes of many, justice had been denied in the criminal trial. The trial left a lasting impact on American culture. It exposed the deep racial divide in how Americans viewed the justice system. It highlighted the power of celebrity and wealth in shaping outcomes in court. It changed how trials were covered by the media, paving the way for the wall-to-wall coverage we see today in other high-profile cases. It also left a complicated legacy for everyone involved. Marcia Clark became a reluctant celebrity, facing both sexism and public scrutiny during and after the trial. Johnny Cochran became a hero to many, but also a controversial figure accused of exploiting race. Mark Fuhrman became a symbol of police corruption. As for O.J. Simpson himself, his life after the trial spiraled further into infamy. He lived under constant public suspicion, unable to escape the shadow of the murders. In 2007, he was arrested for armed robbery in Las Vegas after attempting to reclaim sports memorabilia he claimed belonged to him. This time, the jury had no sympathy. He was convicted and sentenced to 33 years in prison, serving 9 before being released on parole in 2017. Many saw that conviction as a form of delayed justice for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Today, the O.J. Simpson trial remains a cultural touchstone. It is studied in law schools, analyzed in documentaries, and dramatized in television shows. It continues to spark debate about guilt, innocence, race, and justice. Did O.J. Simpson commit the murders? The criminal court said no, the civil court said yes, and the public remains forever divided. What is certain is that the trial exposed truths about America itself, its divisions, its obsessions, and its flaws. The case forced the country to confront uncomfortable questions about domestic violence, police misconduct, the role of race in the justice system, and the dangerous power of celebrity. It also showed how the media can turn tragedy into spectacle, reducing the brutal murders of two people into daily entertainment. For Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, whose lives were cut short in such a brutal way, their voices were often drowned out by the noise of the trial. But behind all the drama, it's important to remember that at the center of the story were two innocent victims whose families never truly found peace. The O.J. Simpson murder trial will always be remembered not only as a courtroom battle, but as a mirror held up to America, revealing the tensions, prejudices, and contradictions that continue to shape society. In the end, it wasn't just O.J. Simpson who was on trial. It was America itself,